Improving the leadership capabilities of municipal elected officials through Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities. This video will show the journey taken during the study of leadership amongst Saskatchewan rural elected officials. In the fall of 2019, I set out to study how the leadership of elected officials could be strengthened. I wanted to explore what tools and resources were already available, as well as identify what could be further offered to help elected officials to lead and carry out their roles and responsibilities better. To have a further reaching impact, I approached SARM and asked them to be my research partner, this enabling the study to reach province-wide. They agreed to this request, and together we began a process of discovery. The first method used in this research for collecting data was a World Cafe. The atmosphere of the World Cafe simulates one of a cafe setting and was chosen because most rural elected officials are quite comfortable exchanging stories while sitting with their friends and neighbors over a cup of coffee. I wanted to provide a safe space for the participants to share their stories and experiences. 30 participants were chosen from 3 different sample groups, being elected officials, chief administration officers, and other key stakeholders, which included other groups and organizations that had regular dealings with rural elected officials. Tables were set up and covered with red and white checkered tablecloths, being similar to an old-fashioned diner. Drawing paper and markers were placed in the middle of each table, along with cafe menus, which listed the question for each round. And of course, each table had a bowl of candies, and coffee and water were available to everyone. There were 3 rounds of questions, and between each round, participants moved to different tables of their choice to allow for collaboration with other participants. The data collected in this method informed the next method of data collection within this study. After the data was analyzed from the World Cafe, 9 semi-structured interviews took place. Equal numbers of participants were selected from the same 3 sample groups used in the World Cafe. Most interviews were carried out over the phone, and all were completed within a 3-week period. The interviews were transcribed and sent back to the individual participants to confirm the accuracy of the interview. The data collected in the interviews were then analyzed and later combined with the data found in the World Cafe. A giant whiteboard was used with sticky notes to uncover the themes and findings of the inquiry. The main inquiry question was, how might Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities help the elected rural municipal officials in Saskatchewan improve their leadership capabilities? Each participant, regardless of which method they were involved in, was asked to think of a time when they were involved in an organization that had great leadership, and then describe what that looked like to them. Stories told consistently included qualities and traits of great leaders, such as someone who trusts and is trustworthy, and that supports and encourages all to participate. They are knowledgeable, accountable, and consistent. They walk the talk. They do what's best for the group and have great communication skills. Over a 4-month period, the data collected was analyzed, documented, and further research was done looking into the current scholarly and professional literature to understand how this research would contribute to what already exists. The key findings of this research were: the stories told of great leadership focused on traits and qualities of great leaders. Resources are already available for elected officials. Time management is an issue for the training of elected officials. A complete understanding of the level of commitment expected of elected officials is required, and a mindset exists that elected officials hold a volunteer position. The conclusions resulting from this included: leadership training is required to increase the number of elected officials who can effectively take part in an inclusive leadership role. A broader exposure of the existing tools and resources provided by SARM would enhance their use by municipal elected officials and CAOs. An understanding and implementation of a type of shared or inclusive leadership model between CAOs and elected officials would enhance how they work together to make better decisions. And adapting an appreciative process in municipal governance would help municipalities to grow and prosper. The recommendations presented back to SARM were to provide education on leadership to elected officials, lobby for inclusion of the topics of local government and leadership in secondary school curriculum, educate potential elected officials of roles and responsibilities and the level of commitment of the position, provide an easily accessible online resource center for elected officials and CAOs, provide more productive and effective ways of learning, and finally, lobby the Ministry of Government Relations to consider a change to legislation that allows for the reeve to be appointed position chosen by the elected officials. To review the complete thesis prior to publication, at which point it will be available through a Google search, please send a request to the email below.